you, Derek, for being on the show with us. We celebrate Black History this month, and thank you for spreading positivity by empowering the future generation. So just thank you for that. Tell us about story time with Uncle Colby and how that came about. If you can just share something about that with us.
Sure thing. Well, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today.
Mhm.
So story time with Uncle Kobe came about just for my love of all things children's literacy.
Mhm.
I tell people all the time that I don't have the traditional author's journey, in that I did not set out to become an author, let alone a children's book author. But I have found such tremendous joy in this space, and I really began to think about like ways to further promote literacy, primarily with Black and Brown youth.
Mhm.
Because as you may know, like, just the reading rates and just literacy overall in our community, sometimes is looked over. And so I wanted to create a platform that promoted literacy and promoted just the love of books and reading amongst Black and Brown children. The other part of it is I wanted to create a platform for diverse authors to share their work. We find that if you look at, statistics, as it relates to children's books, less than 11% of all children's books have main characters of color, and less than about 5% of those books are written by authors of color.
Wow.
And most of them are in like the independent space, and they don't have the means or opportunity to really share on a larger platform, share their work. And so I wanted to provide space really for those authors to get those great books out, to begin to share their stories with an audience that would ultimately appreciate the work that they're doing. So yeah, that's really how Storytime came about. I love it. It's it's so much fun. I really like to tell people it's kind of like Reading Rainbow. I don't know about you, but I grew up on Reading Rainbow with
Yes.
LeVar
Uh-huh.
Burton.
Yes.
And loved it, and actually still love it to this day. I watch sometimes on YouTube the repeats of them, and so I thought that was just such a tremendous platform, and it really taught me a lot growing up. And so I wanted to kind of replicate that, kind of with a modern spin.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Why is it important that these stories are shared now?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely important that these stories are shared and shared widely, because, as I mentioned earlier, like with the statistic, less than 11% of children's books have um, children of color or characters of color portrayed in them. And like, one thing that we learn as as educators and folks that work with children is that children need to see themselves growing up and see people and characters that look like them, growing up. And that's how a lot of um, their characteristics and, mindsets are developed and cultivated in their youth. And so, portraying or having these stories brought out helps them to develop and to learn and to grow, and again to see people that look like them, that deal with some of the situations that they're dealing with, dragons and all of these mythical characters are great in their own right. But when I see someone that is my same hue, my same color, that comes from a background similar to mine, it just does something to my psyche. And so I think that it's just important that we share these stories, because if we don't share them, other folks will attempt to share them and may have a skewed perspective. And I think that it's important that and I tell people this all the time, and which is actually one of the reasons why I became a writer, is that we have to learn to control our narratives and not allow other people to control those narratives and to speak on our behalf, because ultimately they may be speaking one thing that's not uplifting or benefiting us. And so yeah, I think it's just incredibly important that we kind of take back that control and begin to again share these stories.
True, so true. What are kids seeing today that prompted these books? What are
I'm sorry, can you ask that question
Yes,
one more
what are
time?
kids seeing today? What are that prompted these books? What are they seeing?
Yeah, so my first book was written in 2020, after the senseless killing of George Floyd. So of course we were in the height of the pandemic during that time, and then George Floyd happened. It certainly was not an isolated incident. There have been countless stories like the George Floyd story, but for whatever reason, it affected me a bit differently. And I think that, during that time, with kids being home, they were beginning to ask questions. I have people that are young people that I've worked with, and young people that attend my church that were beginning to ask questions around, like, well, why would they stop him? Why are certain things happening? And again, these are the things that our children are seeing on a day-to-day basis. They're seeing it in their communities, they're seeing it in their families, they're seeing it in media, and they have questions. And we can't be naive to think that our children, no matter the age, there are people, 4 and 5 years old that are asking questions around these things. And so I think that it behooves us to create, content, create stories that will help to broach these conversations. So with Son You Matter, specifically, it deals with a father and son, and the father is stopped unjustly, and it really teaches stopped unjustly by a police officer, and it really teaches parents and caretakers and mentors how to broach that conversation, because it is a tough conversation to have when you are dealing with unjust treatment or unfair treatment based on the color of your skin. And so yeah, again, it's very imperative that we control that conversation, and we begin to have those conversations with our kids, because they are absolutely inquisitive and they're absolutely asking support. And I'm so incredibly appreciative of that.
Yes, I've saw all the different supporters, like different celebrities that supported you. It's a
Yeah.
very, very good book. A special little girl. I
Mhm.
read A Special Little Girl. That was inspired by your niece.
Yes,
Can
yes.
you tell me about it?
Absolutely. So a special little girl, like you said, was inspired by my niece Zion, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4.
Mhm.
Zion just turned 12, and so
Oh,
I attended a gymnastics class with her last year, and at the end of that session, watched the instructor award every student with an award except Zion, except my niece. And it was, she needed a little extra guidance, focusing in, but she was still able to do everything that was asked of her. And so when we got home, my niece, who's certainly she's able to speak, but she's not able to, or she has a difficult time rather articulating her emotions. And so oftentimes she communicates through like cartoons or videos. So when we got home, she began to replay a cartoon that talked about how bad it feels to be left out. And so that thing broke my heart, so much so that I ended up staying up the majority of the night. I really researching organizations that center around working with children on the spectrum, primarily children of color,
mhm.
and found that there weren't many organizations that existed like that. But more than, again, the research, I wanted to write an ode and an affirmation to my niece, to let her know that I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care about these folks in this
Right.
gymnastics class. I
Mhm.
want you to know that your family loves you, that we see you, we value you. And so I really wanted to write that affirmation to her, and it has taken off. When I tell you, I am so
Really?
incredibly grateful. Like, I found that in writing that book and releasing it, and then having conversations with other like parents or caretakers who may
Mhm.
have children or family members on the spectrum, is that my story, or Zion's story rather, is not an isolated story, right? There's so many parents that have children on the spectrum that have to deal with these types of things on a day-to-day basis, deal with the discrimination, deal with people not accepting their children into spaces based on, their diagnosis. So yeah, it's taken off, and I am, again, incredibly appreciative to be used to share and shine light on the inequities in one, in diagnosing children of color
Mhm.
with autism, and then just the services that are afforded to children of color, or the lack thereof. And so I'm just grateful to be able to shine that light and
I'm
attention.
excited. I'm going to tell everybody about your book.
Uh,
Actually, my co-host is a teacher and she teaches first grade. And so I'm definitely going to tell her so I can share information so she can share it in her class. Okay.
Thank you so much, Celine. I really appreciate that and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.